It's a personal film. It's a film about a boy and his mother who are thrown into a political situation. The film takes place in 1967. They are not politicized people, but they have been thrown into a political situation. But the center of the story is this boy, this 11-year-old boy, and his sort of hopefulness and his character and how he deals with that life that has now become his new life.
مع سلامتك.
أستاذ ناصر بتعامل ابني مثله مثل باقي الأولاد.
هو مش بمستوى الأولاد الثانيين.
In a way, it is. I mean, I didn't live in 1967, but it's a very important year for my family. As Palestinians from Bethlehem, it was the year that Bethlehem was occupied. So it's a year where the Palestinians who were inside Palestine lived under military occupation. Those who were outside were no longer allowed to return. It was a year of divisions and tragedy. But at the same time, it was hopeful. I mean, it was the 60s everywhere in the world, and people were socially, I mean, they were asking questions. They were trying to change their lives, and they had a belief. They were connected to other parts of the world, and that something could happen. And I like to do something with this period, and not what happens after, which we know about corruption and everything going wrong and different movements, everything, many things going wrong. But I wanted to stay in this sort of more innocent period, you can say. The Arab world has been great. It has been really wonderful. We had the Arab premiere of the film. We chose to do it in Jerusalem. And it was really a great. We released the film for 1 week in an old cinema in Jerusalem. It was really wonderful. And then in the Arab world, we screened in the Abu Dhabi Film Festival, and the film won Best Arab Film. And we've been, traveling a lot with it. Cairo, Carthage. So Beirut is coming. So it's good. And now here in Berlin is the European premiere.
شفنا ضوء القدس. شفناهم.
The film is shot in Jordan, takes place entirely in Jordan. The story takes place in Jordan, and we shot in Jordan. And it's difficult because it's a period piece, and so we had to look for landscape. Because it's very low budget, we didn't have the budget to be able to create too much. So we had to be very minimal with that, and we had to we had to construct a refugee camp. We found an empty plot of land, and we built the refugee camp there because it has to be the way the refugee camps looked in the 60s, and they don't look anything like that today. They were emergency camps. They were temporary. They told everybody they were temporary, and now we know, of course, they're still around, but they don't look like that. They're not tents anymore. They're not Zinco houses. So that world had to be created. And then for the second half of the film, when the boy comes into contact with these fighters, we went to in Jordan, the actual location where the fighters were living and training. And we shot there, and we found a lot of. It was interesting because we found a lot of remnants during the production. During shoot, we would find remnants of the time period. We'd find bullets. We'd find medicine bags that had been donated from other countries. I mean, food cans. I mean, we found a lot of things from the period, especially inside the tunnels, because the fighters had built these tunnels, and one of them was a hospital. One of them, they were all connected. I mean, it was a very intricate world.
Zabin.
Production, it's very different. It's my second feature film, and in the structure is very different than the first one. The first one was a European co-production, and a very complicated European co-production. Salt of the Sea had 8 co-producers. It was also small budget, but there was a little bit of money from Belgium, from France, from Switzerland, and it was a piecing together of things. I could not at the time find Arab money for that film, even though I tried. I tried for 6 years. Now I think the landscape has changed a lot, and with this film, there's an Arab producer who carried the whole film on his back, and Arab financing. For the most part, it's entirely Arab financed. We did get support from Greece for post-production. We were able, because we had enough money to shoot. And it was a risk that we decided to take. We didn't have enough money to complete the film, but we had enough to shoot. Not as much as we originally had hoped for, but we said let's just do it, because we can't. I don't want to keep waiting years and years to make films, and we need to work, and we have to work with whatever resources we can. And I like the boy. I mean, the boy was very key to that, and I was afraid of him. If we wait too long, he's going to grow up. His voice is going to change. He's going to grow a mustache. It will not be the same boy. And I looked a lot for that boy. So I knew he was the right one, and I didn't want to lose him. So we said we'll shoot, and then we'll find post-production later. And I was lucky because we found that in Greece. We found support for the film in Greece.
تتجوزين؟ انت ولد صغير.
This boy is named Mahmoud Asfa. He's from a refugee camp in the north of Jordan. He's very similar to Tariq. We found him. We did a search in community centers, in schools, in drama classes. I mean, everywhere, all over Jordan, and also Palestine. But this boy, we were going into schools, and actually he's the headmaster of the school, of the UNRWA school that he goes to, suggested there's 10 boys here, maybe you should see them. And I saw this, he was immediately, for me, the guy. I mean, he has these like incredible eyes, and they just stayed with me. And then I dreamt about him. I became obsessed with him. I said, I hope I'm not, my hopes are getting too high, and I started to work with him, and he was wonderful. And we, of course, had to approach his parents for permission and to tell them what we were doing. And they were very supportive, and which was really wonderful, because initially they said, it's not what we want for our son. We don't want him to be an actor, but he wants to do it so badly. We will support him. We don't want, the father said, I don't want to stand in his way, but just only one request. He must sleep in the house every night. Wherever you shoot, however long you take, the grandmother wants him at home, at night, sleeping in our house. So we said, okay, we can do that. So it was difficult for the boy, because sometimes we were shooting very far away, 3 hours from them, but he was home every night.
كيف ضيعنا كل شيء؟
No, it's true. I mean, and it was very interesting because they were not just Palestinians, the group. I mean, they were Palestinians, they were Lebanese, they were Syrian, they were Jordanians, they were mixed, and they were Algerians, but they were also Europeans. There's a European character in the film, the guy who does the designing the posters. I mean, I don't go into the details of it in the film, but it was a very mixed group. The Chinese Red Army was part of this. The Irish, I mean, these liberation movements in Cuba, they were all tied together, and they were working together, and they were training with each other. I mean, it was an incredible system of collaboration that does not exist today. I think today it's much more isolated. But talking about religion, also, I mean, it was a very secular movement. But not always. I mean, like a lot of the fighters were Marxist, but they also believed in God. They were Muslims. They were Muslim Marxists. I mean, there was a way to balance that for them. And there's a small sort of conversation about that in the film. But I think today the situation, is definitely very different. Women were also much more involved at that time period than they are today. Women were a major part of the liberation movement. Today, in general, I think people have been, the gap between those who have power and those who don't has become very wide, and a lot of people, I think, feel that they cannot change, they don't have the agency, the power to do anything about it. So there's a frustration today that I think exists. Of course, there's also a lot of happening in the Arab world. I mean, what happened in Tunisia, what's happening in Egypt, what's happening everywhere is an indication that people, I mean, have had enough, and they're doing whatever they can to change that.